Oh, can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Karishma, I think you need to, yeah. Okay, everybody, this is Karishma. She has recently joined us as VARC faculty and everything verbal. So welcome her. She's going to co-host this introductory session with me.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, good morning.
They are absolutely sleepy, at least a few of them. They're worse than I am, isn't it?
Oh, so I'm the only one who's actually awake? That's good to know.
No, I'm sure a few here would be morning people.
Yeah.
All right, we have a decent number of participants, I guess. So most of you, I would recommend, I would suggest that, you use the mic whenever possible. It will save us time. Also, the intonation, what you're trying to say is as much a part, is as much a function of, the what you do with your voice as much as it is of the words that you use. So it makes more sense that you use the mic. But if you cannot, for whatever reason, there's a fight going on behind you or whatever, then of course you can use the text. But try to use the mic. And since there are so many of us, you can raise your hand. There is an option here. I'm sure by now most of you would be conversant with Zoom and everything. So there is an option of raising your hand. So you can raise your hand and then we can, just say that, okay, this person will speak now and this person will speak now and whatever. Even though usually, in my experience, it is not required because most people don't want to talk. I don't know, for some reason, they use the texting thing. But I would suggest that you use the mic. And anything else, Karishma, if you want to tell them about the Zoom thing, because you are an expert on Zoom.
I'm not an expert, but I think, yeah, you've covered most of the things. And there's already a hand raising. So let's take the question from Rohan.
Yeah, Rohan, tell us, sorry.
Or were you just testing the feature? If it works or not? Yeah, that's my question. Okay, maybe that's it. So Rohan, if you don't have a question, go ahead and lower your hand now.
I lowered his hand. Okay.
Do you want to share the thing, the PDF?
I'll allow 1 second.
Or shall I?
Yeah, you do so. I've allowed screen sharing.
All right. Okay, I think we're okay to get started.
So you're going to start, right, Karishma?
No, you are.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So let me just say it initially only that in which case I think I'll share the thing, Karishma, because then I would I'd scroll.
No, that's okay. I'm here to follow along. Yeah.
All right. So this is what we plan to cover. All right. An overview of what CAT is, an overview of the preparation, what all comes and so on, how to prepare, and so on. And eventually we will take questions from you. But before we begin all this, let me just say something so that we get over this. Unlike maths, and even some parts of LR, and I don't think LR, as much as maths, LR will be very similar to verbal in that respect. I mean, the respect in which I'm going to talk about, but yeah, unlike maths, you don't really need classes for verbal. I don't know, sometimes when I am not aware, I will end up using the word verbal because I don't know when and how and who came up with VARC, the term, uh, because verbal ability includes RC. So I don't know how it happened. So for some reason, people have started thinking that there is something called a VARC section, which has RC, reading comprehension, and it has the rest of the questions are called VA, which is not.
I have to interrupt there and just agree with you 100% because I was wondering myself why it's VARC, and I thought maybe I've missed a beat in all these years.
Yeah, and I never got to know when this happened, but suddenly I saw everybody using VRC, and so I have to use because otherwise kids won't know what I'm talking about, in the sense they might misunderstand me because they have separated VA and RC. So I use it extremely reluctantly, which is I don't know. Anyway, so we can't help it. But I may end up using the word verbal, guys, and you just have to understand that if I am using the word verbal, it includes RC. Okay, so just even though I'll try to use VARC as much as I can, and I hate it every time I do, but what to do? Yeah, so you do not need classes to prepare for verbal because there is no theory. Okay, I mean, there is some in grammar and whatever, but all of that can be very easily done on one's own, because grammar mostly has got to do with knowing or not knowing things, the rules and whatever. And they also keep changing and evolving and so on. So you don't really need any lectures and whatever. It's just that, yeah, there are certain skill development tips and tricks that some of us know, which we can share with you. But even those can be figured out on one's own as you move on in your journey, or you can read about them and whatever. So you don't really need classes. But so yeah, so this is not, I mean, those of you who are not our students already, because this is open to all. This is not a lecture or a session on join us and whatever. You don't have to join anybody for that matter. So so that's the thing. Anyway, so
audio.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I don't think that was to us. I think it was just somebody speaking.
Okay, so I'll mute all for the time being. Yeah. I think this part, Karishma, why don't you take up, because I haven't, yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, Satyam says, welcome to inductor class, first lesson, you don't need classes. Well, we try to keep it real. So yes, absolutely. What Massey said. Here are some of the essential dates for you. Of course, you can find this on the internet, but we thought that we will just start by taking you through all the essentials, and that way you can also go ahead and create a calendar mentally for yourself or physically, if that works for you better, to see how your prep is going to go and which phase you want to dedicate to which subject. So yes, you're going to have your notifications out at the end of July this year. And the registrations will begin in the first week of August, as they usually do. It's preferred that you fill out the forms as quickly as possible, because applications do tend to, pile up, and you don't want to leave it till the end, especially because other applications will also be opening sometime soon in September and October. Submit the fee by the middle of September. And if there are any application corrections, if there's any updates that you want to make, then you need to make it within the next week. Your admit cards will be there within October end, and the dates of examinations will be announced in November. Once the exams have been held, your answer key release date is on the first week of December. And if you have any objections with the scores or anything, you can do so right after, within the second week. And then, of course, the announcement of final results happens in the first week of January. So almost a year from now. And that's about it. If you have any questions, you feel free to raise your hand at this time.
I want to say something. When you guys are typing, when you're putting in your thoughts or comments in the chat, make sure it is, make sure you choose everyone, because I think by default it goes just to the host or, somebody. So just make sure that you have chosen everyone in the chat thing.
By default, it goes to everybody. You have to actually, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. No, I don't know, but in my sessions, a lot of times the comment was very general, but it just came to me. So I just assumed that by default it goes to the host. I don't know. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to add anything to this, Massey? Although this is pretty straightforward.
No, this is, I think, I don't know if it is true, but it seems like it that the more late you are in terms of finally submitting your application, I think sometimes what happens is you may not get the center of your choice. Has that got to do with the lateness of it, or it's just random?
I think earlier when it was physical centers, it wasn't like that. But now with the online CAT, it has become like that. It's probably because they go ahead and slot people as the applications are rolling in, just like it happens in GMAT and GRE.
Yeah, so all the more reason for you guys to just get it done with as soon as possible. Also, couple of more reasons behind it is, if you start everything early, even if you don't submit the form, then in groups and everything. This is metro construction. I'm so sorry. If you're a part of some groups or whatever, and you may suddenly realize that, oh, somebody's talking about this thing, I didn't realize. And so you can go and, correct it or do something about it and whatever. Because this is extremely common that after submitting the form, kids suddenly realize or figure out that, oh, I've done this or I've done that, and, there's a mistake and whatever. Another reason could be that in case you have submitted the form and there is a mistake, at least there is time for you to sort of get in touch with them and get it corrected, or yeah, the earlier you do, the better. But it is so common to see people getting frantic and panicking towards the end because only one day is left and so on. So my suggestion will be, please don't leave it for the very last day.
So Satyam is asking, are the dates final? Because CAT 22 result was announced on 21st December. Yes, these are the dates that we were able to find online on multiple sources. So these seem to be as final as we get them right now. But of course, we're going to keep our eyes out if anything changes in the future. There is still a year ahead.
Yeah, and all this will be finally confirmed towards the end of July when the CAT notification, generally, that is when it comes out. And there are changes from their end only, but that we can't help. So take it as a very general, broad set of guidelines. Yeah. All right, so this is the VARC section. Okay. 40 minutes given to it. Okay, let me again say something beforehand. And I say it every time with my classes, but for some reason, I really don't know why kids, either they forget about it or they ignore it, or I don't know what happens. I'll explain what I'm saying just. So anyway, all this can change, okay? All of this can change. CAT can suddenly become a 3-hour paper. suddenly the verbal section could be 1 hour, okay, whatever. The type of question can change and whatever. This is why I was saying that, kids forget or don't listen, because I tell them since, I mean, from the very first class, that for the past 3, 4, 5 years, this is what has come. But this is what has come for the past 3, 4, 5 years. That does not mean this is what comes or this is what will come. So, for example, I told them that for many years, paracompletion as a question came. So paracompletion, basically, there is a paragraph with supposedly, and this supposedly is in quotes, supposedly the last sentence missing. And there are 4 answer choices, and you have to pick up the best sentence that supposedly completes that paragraph. I won't get into why am I saying supposedly. That's for the theory class. But yeah, so that's the deal. So the last sentence is missing and you're supposed to pick up. So I told them that for many years it came, but for the past few years it hasn't been coming. So what has been coming, so this is what I used to say in the classes, that so RC, reading comprehension, parajumbles, 2 types, normal parajumbles in which there is a, okay, so let me first explain what each type is. So basically you have been getting 24 questions. Again, this can change, of which the maximum chunk is reading comprehension. So reading comprehension, I'm sure most of you would know, is you given an extract from a, generally speaking, a larger source. So there is a passage which is called a passage, and then there are a few questions based on that passage. So reading comprehension, so comprehension has to do with understanding. So have you understood? Basically, it is a test of, have you understood the passage? So test of comprehension. So that is what is reading comprehension. Then you have paracompletion, which I have just explained. Then you have jumble paragraphs or parajumbles, wherein you're given a set of 4, 5, or 6 usually, but okay, I'll come back to this. So 4, 5, or 6 sentences which are sort of jumbled up, and you're supposed to rearrange them to form a coherent paragraph, so the correct order, the supposedly correct order. Okay, why did I say, why was I talking about 4, 5, 6? Because parajumbles have now become what is called as theta questions. Type in the answer. Okay, so theta. So you're supposed to, so there is a little box given in which you're supposed to type in. So there are no choices. All right. So, and theta questions, I think almost always are, they don't carry negative marks. So ever since parajumbles have become theta questions, they are 4 sentence, the 4 sentence types. Okay. Was there an exception to this, Karishma?
Not that I can recall, no. Not
Yeah.
since it became 4 sentences.
Yeah, so ever since they become theta, they become 4 sentence types, but otherwise parajumbles can be 5 sentence types. And earlier there also used to be 6 sentence types. Usually in 6 sentence types, the first and 6th sentences were fixed, and you were supposed to just arrange the middle 4. So that's what is with parajumbles. Then you have the odd ones out, which is a subset of parajumbles. So basically you're given 5 sentences. 4 of them can be arranged in a parajumble and 1 doesn't belong. Doesn't really, so odd one out here doesn't mean it's just completely off. No, it is connected. So they have picked up this sentence from the same sort of a larger paragraph. It is just that it wasn't in sequence. Okay, so it was somewhere else. So that's with the odd one out. Again, odd ones out also have been theta questions. So when you're supposed to pick up an answer, so you just have to pick up, the answer is the odd one out. So suppose the answer is 3. So you have to type 3 inside that box. And then you have paragraph summary, wherein you just given a short little paragraph and you're supposed to pick up. So here's the instructions for summary questions, which is below are 4 alternative summaries given of a paragraph, of this paragraph or whatever. Choose the one that best captures the essence of the paragraph. So 4 alternative summaries are given and choose the one that best captures the essence. So it is essentially an essence question. So which in RC terms means it is a main idea question or a central idea question. In rare cases, because usually it is just the main idea, but in rare cases, it could have one or maximum 2 more things, because it is also supposed to be a summary. So see, summary includes the essence, but summary is like a concise version of whatever has been said. So it can include a couple of more important things. However, in summary questions of CAT, it is usually just the central idea, considering the answer choice is usually one sentence. But in few cases, it could be a little bit more. So this is the deal with this. Now, if we exclude CAT 2022, then what you were getting for around 5 years, I think, was RC, no para completion. So you weren't getting para completion. You were getting RC, para jumbles, both types, normal and odd ones out, and summary questions. This is what you were getting. However, what I was telling my students is that this is what you have been getting. That does not mean this is what you will get. Anything from earlier you may get, or suddenly they may come up with a new kind of question. And why am I saying this to you is that if you guys are aware of what happened in CAT 2022, then they came up again with para-completion questions. Okay, so now, so why am I saying this? Because suddenly in the group that we have, suddenly there was this, they came up with a new kind of question. I don't know what to do. I was so, panicked, and I just didn't know. And these are my students, okay? So these are the students whose classes I had taken. And I didn't know what to do or what to say. Also, we have in our module, in our course of VARC, we have para-completion as a module with theory and with practice questions, close to 100 practice questions. More importantly, in the live lectures, in the live batch that we have, I took para-completion classes for every batch. And guess what? Because this was towards the end, in each batch that I took these classes, para-completion, maximum students that came in a batch was, I think, 7. Otherwise, 3 to 4 students used to come. Because when they read that, okay, today is this class para-completion and this question hasn't come for 5 years, so obviously it is not going to come. Also because people are really awed by the YouTubers, the geniuses there, who predict. They are gods. They predict things. This is what is going to come. This is what is not going to come. And they somehow, kids for some reason, trust them more. And so they ignored those classes. And then suddenly when the question came, they were like, what the hell? So please, guys, do not think that this is what is going to happen. So this, what you can see on the screen is what usually happens. All right. And people were blaming the CAT, the ions and whatever. How can you do this and whatever? But from their point of view, it is a very logical thing to do, to come up with even a new kind of question, because it's a test. It is not a test of these 5 things which are written here. It's a test of your language skills. Can you read and comprehend material? Can you do you understand when somebody is talking to you, or when you read something, or can you communicate properly and whatever? I can test it whichever way I like it. All right. So how can I mean, just these 5 things are the only ways to test it. Why are you blaming them? It is not a test. They never say that it is a test of these 4 things. They say it's a test of language skills. It's as simple as that. Fortunately, in quant, they do the same thing. There is a test of a quantitative skill. It's just that there is nothing outside of it, outside those topics of arithmetic, algebra, and geometry, which is why they came up with this wonderful section called LR, logical reasoning, which is for most people it's madness, because nobody can teach it, and anything they can ask, anything, because there is no syllabus there. There cannot be a syllabus. So I think it's an excellent section to test your logical skills, also because it cannot be taught. And and here's another wonderful fact about it, which is that so since there isn't much theory in it, you can only do it question by question and then try to evolve over a period of time. So obviously there's no theory. So the maths people of Takshzila, Chandra especially, and whatever, so they say that, there is no theory. So this is how you go about it. And since kids are like, but there is no theory, and our students end up taking exclusive LR courses from elsewhere, thinking that somebody will be able to teach them theory. This is, I understand from the point of view of kids. I mean, kids are scared, and you are all said and done, you think you're damn grown-ups and whatever, but you are still very young, and there are things that scare you and lots is at stake. But you have to go deep into things and understand that what can be done and what cannot be done, so understand this anyway. So this is the basics thing. And so as is mentioned here, you need, basically what you need is sound foundations of English language. You need effective reading skills, attention to detail, and clarity in these grammar, syntax. And so you don't need to know rules of grammar, but you need to even intuitively be well versed with it. And one of the best ways to do each one of these things, or all of these things, is to read. And not just read, but read diversely and extensively. So you read a lot, but more importantly, you read from here, meaning you read science also, history also, philosophy also, politics also. You read from social sciences, psychology, economics, and so on. So you read from all sorts of areas, and you read as much as you can, and that's the best way to figure it out. So for example, if you break down each one of these things, RC, paracompletion, parajumbles, and then summary, each one of these things has got to do with text, okay? And each one of these things has got to do with comprehending that text, whether it is a little paragraph, it is jumbled up sentences which were originally a part of a paragraph, or it is a proper passage which has multiple paragraphs usually. Each one of these things is text, and comprehending that text and doing something with it. In RC, you're supposed to comprehend it and answer a few questions. In paracompletion, you're supposed to comprehend it, and because of it, you're supposed to figure out what will come towards the end. In parajumbles, you're supposed to comprehend and then arrange it in order, because only by comprehension can you do that. And in summary, you have to obviously comprehend and figure out the essence. So it all comes down to comprehension. Okay, so now we can give you tips and tricks, and believe us, there are a lot of amazing things we can do to help you. But as I said, if you read properly and extensively and varied subject matter, you don't need any help, provided you do these things. Okay, so that's the best thing I can tell you. Honestly, this is where the class can end also. Just start reading, man. Okay, all right. Now, do you want to add, subtract something, Karishma?
I think what's coming up next is where I will add my 2 cents. So if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I will just add a little bit to what Masi has been saying, that reading is something that you just cannot discount for. It's going to become the foundation and the base of all of your learning. And it doesn't really just stop at your taking the test and scoring well. It actually starts from there, because once you take the test and you score well, you go to a good B school, you don't stop reading. You, in fact, intensify your reading efforts, because everything you do, from attending classes to doing project work to just doing some self-development, will come from taking a lot of qualitative input. And that can only happen through reading, because I don't think there's a lot of possibility for you to interact with all sorts of people, like good people who can, who have the time and the willingness to help you. And on the other hand, it's easier to grab, a book or an article or an essay and just have a quick read of it and learn something from it, than to go out into the real world and seek out people for that kind of information. So winnowing that down to what we're doing here, what you need for verbal ability is your skills in comprehension. And like Masi said, we're going to work on multiple aspects of improving your comprehension abilities, your manner of engaging with the text, your methodology of taking a text and treating it like a formula. And by that, I don't mean learn it and then regurgitate it back on paper. What I mean is that every text, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, long form, news, whatever it is, it comes from a formulaic understanding of how language works. So when you get that understanding, you also become automatically better at comprehension. Secondly, grammatical accuracy. So again, like Masi mentioned, we're not going to go into grammar system, because that's not something that we need to do at this point. All of you are coming from, we're assuming, English speaking backgrounds, or at least you have English, which, helps take you from day to day. So there's no need for us to go into the what and the how of how grammar works. But at the same time, there are things in grammar which are often tested in non-grammatical contexts and questions as well. And that is something where grammatical accuracy will play a very important role. Contextual meaning of words simply means that instead of looking to the dictionary for all of your word meaning needs, or today, of course, it won't even be a dictionary, it will be dictionary.com. So going there and then finding a limited meaning to a word, and then, realizing that maybe that's not the only way that this word is used, you want to learn how to cull out the meaning of the words that you're looking at from how they've been used. And there's a whole different world of, contextual meaning and contextual relevance that then comes through. And it's a much more fun way of learning. And in fact, the daily dose that we post in our Telegram groups, it also informs to this kind of learning, where we encourage you to not just think of words as these closed off boxes where only one meaning applies. And instead, we encourage you to learn how the words work and how they transform, or at least change a little bit when they're used from one context to the other. And that's something that takes you very far into reading comprehension, because there are sometimes moments where the passage is a little more dense in terms of difficulty, and the words that have been used and the questions are far simpler. But at the time that you're reading the passage, you're coming across these words and you might be thinking, oh my God, I don't know the meaning of this word. Is this going to hamper the overall understanding of my passage? So we are here to tell you that that's not going to happen. But it'll be great if you could build, the skill of recognizing that this word is here. I'm going to guess the contextual meaning of this word and go on, instead of, putting my brakes right here and saying, well, all is lost. So there's a bunch of things that you can do for contextual meaning. It's all really fun. Argument analysis is something we do just to help you get to the summary, get to the, main point of the argument. And, the questions that are very common in CAT, like, what is the crux of the passage, or what is the central idea of the passage? What is the main argument? What is the theme? All of these things come when you look at a passage, not just as a bunch of ideas, but as an argument that is actively in the process of being built. And the more you engage with the argument overall as something that you can see, the better it becomes for you to say, if you're looking at 5 options or 4 options, you're like, but the author is not doing any of this. So you eliminate it very quickly. And you can do the same thing with paracompletion and summary as well. So recognizing an argument correctly is a really important skill, not just in the exams, but also, later in life. And of course, quick decision making, because you cannot dilly-dally. You have a limited number of minutes to get through each question. And especially for people who are not used to reading long texts at a stretch, and long texts from different topics all in the same sitting, it can become a little taxing. So we also work a little bit on how to quickly eliminate options, quickly get to the answer, and not second guess yourself into oblivion. You want to get through to the next page. So these are a few things that we will be doing in verbal ability. Massey, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'll just add to this. Argument analysis is also relevant. So there is something called critical reasoning, which used to come as separate questions in CAT. Critical reasoning is a major ingredient of GMAT exam. Okay, and it comes in other exams like XAT and NMAT and SNAP and so on. So in CAT, exclusive critical reasoning questions haven't been coming. Critical reasoning basically has to do with it is another form of LR. It just unlike the LR that is asked in the DI section. So the LR that is asked in DI section uses quantitative skills mostly. Whereas critical reasoning uses language and logical skills. Okay. So, so very common questions of critical reasoning are, what is the assumption of the above argument, or which one of the following most seriously weakens the above argument, or which one of the following most seriously strengthens the above argument. So these were the questions. But what CAT has done is, instead of asking CR as separate questions like GMAT, it has gone the way of GRE. So GRE also has removed CR as separate questions and incorporated them in normal RC. Okay, so, and the same CAT has done. So there is a passage and in which there could be an argument. Okay, by the way, argument here has a very different meaning. Argument here means that you take the help of what are called premises, which is just a fancy word for given facts. Okay, so with the help of given facts, a conclusion is or is not reached. So either it is stated, the conclusion, or it is implied. So this is an argument. And so now we can strengthen it or we can weaken it. I won't get into the details. So there may be one or more arguments given in the passage, and then you have questions in CAT which ask you to strengthen them or weaken them or figure out the assumption of the author. So, that is also where argument analysis plays a huge role. All right. Yeah.
Would you like to take them through this, or shall I?
I think I've already taken care of the first part, it seems.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you can take over the rest.
All right. So continuing from our discussion on how important reading is, and reading from a wide range of subjects, a wide range of topics, not really limiting yourself to what you've been used to reading or what makes sense to you, is at the heart of preparing, not just for CAT, but for all the exams that you might be planning on sitting for, and generally for becoming a more well-rounded person. So this is something that is an active skill that you want to build in yourself. Now, the rest of the points really are about becoming a better test taker. So I'm just going to take you through all of them. Learning how to read with a purpose is very different from learning reading for leisure. And by that, I mean, picking up a book on a Sunday morning and just spending your time leisurely reading it and enjoying it is all great. And you absolutely should do it. But when you're doing it to score well, you definitely want to, kind of quicken the pace and learn how to skim and scan, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So reading with a purpose really simply means turning the idea of enjoyment on its head a little bit. And by that, I don't mean you're not enjoying reading, but you're also keeping at the back of your mind the fact that I have to finish it and I have to get to the questions. And this also, very quickly, I'll address. A lot of you will come to us in classes asking the question, is it good to read the questions beforehand? And to that, I at least personally will say, do what works best for you. Sometimes people respond really well to the goal of it. So when you look at the answers and you have the options read, you know what you're going to look for, and you come back to the passage and you're like, okay, I'm just going to find the information and ignore the rest. That works for a lot of people. And for a lot of other people, they like to kind of create a foundation from the passage itself and carry all that information off to the question, and then just come back very quickly to confirm that what they remember is correct. So whatever works for you is the correct way of doing this. But ultimately, learning how to read with a purpose is an essential skill that you want to build with all sorts of reading, not just the reading that you enjoy. The next thing that comes up in this series of methods that we will be teaching is skimming. So how you skim is directly related to how much time you will have left to deal with each question. Skimming is essentially important for people who struggle with the speed of reading. And let me tell you, speed of reading is something you can build over time, but I also know that it's a skill that requires a lot more than just concentration. It requires a lot of other concentrated efforts. So skimming is one of those. I don't want to call it a trick because it's not a trick. It's actually a skill that you build over time, but it helps you in crossing long stretches of text in a shorter amount of time than you would otherwise. And then you have more time left to deal with questions. So coming to that is scanning. Once you have skimmed through a passage and you pretty much have an idea of what the argument, like Massey explained, that argument is in the passage, then you can go ahead and scan for information. And because your mind will have created a mental map of all the information and where exactly it's placed in the passage, you won't need to read the entire passage over and over again for each question, which I know a lot of people end up doing. So scanning for information is exactly what we mean by reading with a purpose. You know what you're looking for, you go exactly to that point, you take out the information, you come back to the answer. When it comes to the stem of the question is that one line in bold which tells you what you need to do in that question. So for example, looking for a conclusion, looking for an assumption, looking for the central idea, or identifying what the author meant, or the author's intention, or everything. So that one question line is called the stem of the question. And it's difficult to explain without examples, so we're not going to do it too much today, but you would be surprised at how wrong people can go by simply misunderstanding the stem of the question. So just learning how to read the stem correctly and making sure that you've got it, and then going back to answering the question is something we will actually spend some time on doing. And lastly, learning to identify minor differences. So, that famous thing of, I was down to C and D and then I couldn't decide. And then I chose D and the answer was C. So that there's no magic trick. There is really no malice in the people who are designing the exams. Actually, I don't know. I mean, everybody's human, but there's really, as far as I know, they're not trying to trick you or anything, but they do create options which are almost identical, which are like mirror images of one another, but there are a couple of differences. Now, it could be from a have to a had, which comes down to grammar, or it could be an adjective usage where one adjective is a positive connotation and the other is negative. And you're like, but both mean the same thing. But what you want to do is go back to your vocabulary lessons and contextual meaning and think about what the word connotate instead of what they annotate. I mean, not what they mean, but what the contextual meaning that they carry. So these are minor differences, just two examples of minor differences, but there are so many ways in which minor differences can be inserted into two identical looking options. And the skill to identify them, to separate them, and then say, yeah, that's not it. I know what you're doing, but I've got it.
Adding a word like only or always. Including a word which changes the meaning. Yeah.
So many wonderful things. Yeah. So that's also something that we will be doing in verbal ability and reading comprehension.
I'll just add one thing to whether or not to read the questions beforehand. When CAT was a paper-based test, then it obviously, I also, say that it's a personal choice. But with online framework, it has become slightly difficult, which is that left hand of the screen is the passage, right hand is one question based on that passage. And then you're supposed to select that question one way or another, I think, before moving to the next screen. So you have to leave it for later or whatever. I don't know if you can browse in GMAT this. I think in CAT probably you can browse. But even if you can, then you have to keep clicking for each question.
Yeah.
And then you will have to come back to the first question. Okay, so because of that, going through the questions beforehand can be slightly clumsy and it can end up taking a little bit of your time. So just be careful, that's all.
Yeah, I will say that I think you can go back and forth within the passage. Once you're finished with the passage, then you cannot. And I would still recommend that if reading the question first is an instinctual thing for you, read one question, not all of them.
The one which is on the screen.
Yeah, that's it. Deal with the one at hand.
Yeah.
So these are a few things that we wanted to share with you on preparation and self-study. Self-study is a key part of your preparation for exams. Massey, do you want to say anything about either of these, or shall I just go ahead?
You go ahead and I'll speak.
Jump in when you need. Yeah. Right. So since we're looking at verbal ability, engaging with English is an essential, requisite for becoming a good, not just test taker. I see you, Shubham, 1 second, but also just improving on English, which I'm sure is a secondary goal for a lot of you. Before I move on, yes, Shubham.
Okay, so first of all, this session was extremely useful. My question was, basically, we know that reading is very important to ace CAT or to ace the VARC section, a so-called English section. So my question is for reading. I can see that both of you are quite well versed in English, but for some people like me who are average readers or who read 1 or 2 books a year, reading is a mammoth task for us. So what I was asking is, are articles better, or should we go for books? Because articles can give a huge exposure to different genres that books does not give. So yeah.
Can we come back to this later? We have a Q&A session towards the end. We will remember your question, Shubham. So don't worry at all. And this is a good question. Okay, so we will take it up. So just keep your questions, and in case you think you may forget your questions, so you can just note them down, and then you can ask us later. Okay, so let's just wind this up ASAP, and then we will come back to the questions.
Yeah.
Okay. I think just taking from what Shubham was saying, making reading a sustainable habit, I would recommend find something that works for you more easily. That could be books, that could be articles, and stick to that. As long as you are diversifying, as long as you're adding more to your reading habits instead of deleting, I think we're good to go. Creating more opportunities for more input. What I mean by input is, see, when we don't take in new language, we're not going to be able to produce new language. We can't create new language on our own. There's a lot of wonderful examples of good language being used all around us. So we need to create opportunities where we listen to people. So like, attending a class with the teacher, or listening to a good lecture from somebody who has a good command over English, things like that. So more opportunities for input, even if you're not actively engaging with it. I'm saying have it passively, just running in the background, and even that helps, trust me. Pay attention to qualitative degrees. What I mean by that is, don't just listen to or read anything out there. There's a lot of nonsense and trash available, because a lot of people think that they're very good with English, but that's not true. I don't want to be overly critical, but it's just what it is. So don't just pick up any book from anywhere. Read some reviews, go to Goodreads or any reliable source where good books are recommended if you are going to become a big book reader. And from there, you pick up your qualitative text. Okay, not just from anywhere that somebody recommended a book to you and you went and bought it. Okay, actively indulging and staying updated. So updated, I mean, even if it's something like meme language, I would personally recommend you should know it, because it just increases your overall understanding of language. There is nothing more evolutionary than language. after language, the only other bigger evolution that's happening is with us. So you will be amazed at how incredibly powerful the evolution of language is and how quickly people adapt to it. So I'm not saying that forget the basis of strong, correct language and, just speak in text language. That's not what I'm saying, but stay updated with what's happening with language overall. Seek socials that help upgrade your language in your routine. So if you're going to be on social media, try to avoid Facebook because, I don't want to get into it. It's just, just don't do it. If you're going to go for Instagram, try and follow some accounts which, post helpful tips, not just for cat, because it will feel like everything is cat. Then don't do that. But like a lot of people, post stuff about interesting facts or facts from history or whatever subject you might find interesting, and they do it with good English. So why not just indulge in that? So, seeking socials which upgrade you instead of which stun you into, nonsensical information. So do that instead and seek out parcels of time to read. So once again, people tend to think that reading book is a leisurely activity. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. You can have a piece of book, a piece of literature, articles, essays, speeches, whatever, what have you, on your phone, in your notebooks or in your books or in your backpack, wherever, and little parcels of time are all you need. So if you're traveling, if you're commuting and not driving, you can whip something out. If you're waiting for someone, you can read a quick article of 5 minutes. And these days you have these wonderful websites, which we will share with you afterwards, which tell you exactly how much time an average reader would need to finish an article. So I think that's a great tool to have, great addition to how you decide to read something. And moving on to practice and study. So this is aside and outside of your classroom structure, creating a routine of taking periodic mock tests. I cannot stress this enough. I'm a huge proponent and advocate of taking mock tests regularly so that you are not left with the question, I don't know how I'm doing, or how do you think I'm progressing? I don't know. You tell me, create an error log, which is the next point, and maintain a pattern of your errors and see whether you're improving on them or not. That's the only way to improve on a test. And I say this because many times, and I've seen this in all my years of teaching, that a lot of people are very good with language, very good with math. What they're not good is with the pressure of test taking, and that's where they, lose out. So taking regular mock tests also takes out, the heebie-jeebies out of the test-taking routine, and also help you figure out what's going on with a certain question, why are you not able to crack it, all those things. When you interact with so many people, you can also find learners who are exactly of your caliber. So seek them out actively and do some study time together, or you can exchange your mock test scores with one another and just, kind of have this community of like-minded people who are in it for the same thing. And it's a nice way for people to encourage themselves to study more and better. And similarly, find different ways of learning. So diversifying your learning techniques, you never know how a person is learning. And by sharing ideas with them, they might tell you something, what I do is this. And you're like, oh, that's actually really interesting. I'd like to try that. And then you end up learning something new and effective. And of course, taking breaks and times off. So you might be studying, you might be working. Along with that, if you're doing something like this, it can get a little taxing and it can get a little monotonous. So I'm here to tell you, taking breaks and planning times off properly is such an essential thing to have. And it's not even going to be useful just now, but also when you become a regular student of a B school, and then when you have jobs and you want to study higher, whatever, just realizing that break time is an essential part of just being human, is an important thing. So these are a few things that we put together for you just to get you started thinking about the CAT prep. And now I think we are going to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we should start with what Shubham asked, and I will say a few things, and then Karishma, you can also add us. You may probably disagree with some parts or agree, I don't know. So here's the thing, okay. In theory, it sounds correct that if you read articles, and especially if you're consciously reading from here and there, then you are reading diverse subject matter. In theory, that is correct. The problem is, if you go to good sources for articles, okay, so let's say Eon is now one of the most known and common. One, because it is inherently good, but more for CAT prep people, I think Eon has become more popular because CAT has consistently asked about, I mean, they have given passages which are extracts from Eon articles, including, I think, this year, isn't it? So I think they have been doing it year after year. One is because Eon is damn good. So let me just take you to Eon 1 second.
In the meantime, Ekagra, why don't you take some time to type out your questions so that we have it on board? Just put it in the chat box.
Yeah, not at the expense of listening, though. All right, this is Eon, okay, eon.co. And it has articles from all sorts of areas. In fact, that also brings me to how you should make use of Eon. So if you go to menu here, these are the 5 broad categories or genres or whatever you want. 1 second, somebody has come on video. Yeah, 5 broad categories or genres or subject matters: philosophy, science, psychology, society, ethics. And each one of these, there are essays and videos and audios and things which are popular in each one of these. First of all, it is very broad, but now let's look at something. What happened? Yeah, now let's look at something more amazing. Suppose you go to philosophy. Now, these are the sub-genres which philosophy has or includes in Eon. So there are essays on beauty and aesthetics, on bioethics, on comparative philosophy, and so on. So let's go to metaphysics, which I think, because most of you wouldn't be knowing what it means. So anyway, and now these are the essays and videos and whatever from metaphysics. All right. So let's say the problem of now. So this, by the way, you can also do it this way. Now, what I'm going to say, rather than the other way. I mean, you can do both ways. So suppose you were for some reason, you were reading this essay, maybe because it was on your screen and so on. And the problem of now, the injunction of to immerse yourself in the present might be psychologically potent, but is it metaphysically meaningful? And then you will read this, understand it or not understand it. And if you go to the bottom, then it also has given tags. And these tags are the subject matter, the broad area, and of course, the sub areas. So it belongs to philosophy of mind, philosophy of language, and metaphysics. Now, suppose you found it very interesting or you found it difficult. And so you want to read, for either reason, you want to read more about, let's say, what philosophy of language is, because that is the part in this essay that you didn't understand. So you'll click on philosophy of language, and now you have all these essays and videos and whatever from philosophy of language. Okay, so now that is pretty cool. But here's what I was going to talk about to answer Shubham, his name was? Yeah, Shubham's question. Okay. First of all, suppose you saw this on your screen, like at Eon homepage, suppose this was there and you thought, okay, the problem of now, what does it mean? Now you come to this and you read the subtitle. The injunction to immerse yourself in the present might be psychologically potent, but is it metaphysically meaningful? Now, this first one only will, as far as I am aware of my students, this first word itself will sort of trip them up. That what the hell does this mean? So now you can't even begin to read this because you are stuck with the subtitle. I mean, ideally you should still carry on reading and infer the meaning, but I'm sure most of you, if the subtitle itself, so now you'll have to figure out what is metaphysical. Okay. But now let's see if when we start reading it. I'm just skimming this. Okay, so just give me a moment. Okay, so look at this. Okay, rather they point to the singularity of the present moment, and this singularity is given in quotes or quotations. The sorry, quotes. Yeah, the idea that the now is all we have. I will use singular and whatever. Now, what is going to happen? And I can already see it, that this thing which happened with this word metaphysically will happen constantly throughout this essay. Okay, let me give you just another example. Now, here's the thing. What can Kurosawa classic tell? This is very brief. The mind does not exist. What is going to happen? Let's say the no mind thesis, okay? Homeric Greek. And you are in Eon, especially in any good online or offline source that you go to for reading articles, this is going to happen for people who are beginning to read and so on, that there is so much stuff that they won't understand. And so effectively, the article or passage will be half understood, somewhat understood, not understood at all, or misunderstood. You know, any one of these things is possible. This is where books are significantly better and so much better, because a book, a non-fiction book I'm talking about, a non-fiction is based on facts, information, reality. I mean, usually, unlike fiction, which is imaginative and so on. It's a story. So a non-fiction book is usually on one thing, and a lot of thought and effort and editing and re-editing and revision and revision, and then the professionals in the publishing house doing things with it. It is a function of all of these things. Plus, any good book is a function of minimum a year, but sometimes it takes many years to come out. So it's the distillation of the thoughts, the thinking, the effort, lots of things on that one topic that the book is on. And so it'll usually introduce you to that thing, tell you about it, argue in favor of it or against it, give you different other viewpoints on it. And so even though it feels like I'm only reading one thing, no, that's not what is happening. Okay, so for example, let's say here's a book. Okay, it's called Aristotle, A Very Short Introduction. Now, I really recommend these very short introduction books because first of all, they are not, so deep and so heavy. They are introductions and they are very short introductions. So they're little books, okay, and very thin. Average 100 pages. Now, so it seems like, okay, first of all, we will get to know Aristotle pretty much. Quite a bit just based on this little book. But it is not as if it is going to be on Aristotle only. So there is something called index, which tells us the most common, most important terms and concepts and names used in the book. So I'll tell you the most important ones. How do you judge the most important ones? Which have the most page references in how many pages they have come. So Aristotle is obviously there. Athens is there, obviously. Then we have something called axiomatization. I have no clue, but the book will tell me, okay? And it is on page number 39 to 40, 45, 46, 53 to 54, 60, 62, 86, 113 to 115. This is just axiomatization, whatever the hell. Okay, then you have biology. Aristotle, by the way, those of you who don't know Aristotle, he was what is known as a polymath. Okay, he did biology. He's known as one of the earliest physicists and biologists. Then you have astronomy. Again, if you don't know Aristotle, then you wouldn't know. Then you have something called cause. cause. Okay. Page number 25, 37, 40, 53 to 6, 3 pages. Page number 80, 83 to 91. Whoa, that's like 8 pages. 113, 116 to 117, which means cause is a major deal in this book. Okay. Then you have change, then you have constitutions, then you have contemplation, then you have definition. Definition is something which is talked about in this book, which is quite cool. Then you have generation, you have explanation, you have knowledge, which is divided into 2 more parts, desire for knowledge and growth of knowledge, and so on. So this is not just Aristotle. No book is on that. I mean, it is on that one thing, but it will tell you so much. Like, people ask me a very common question: how do you know which book to read? And whatever. Well, books tell me which book to read. If I'm liking a book, it must have quoted somebody or given references, which automatically means I'm going to buy that thing or those many books which that book that I'm loving has talked about. So first of all, it is not about this one thing, but secondly, it takes you deeper and you'll know that thing in and out, which is not the case with articles unless you're willing to take so many extra steps. So for example, in that case of that essay, metaphysics, you should, if not immediately, that sooner or later, you'll have to go figure out metaphysics, either from Wikipedia or Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy or wherever you want to go. So, metaphysics. Then you'll have to figure out who is Eckhart Tolle. Suppose you don't know Tolle, I don't know his pronunciation. Suppose you don't know him, you'll have to figure that out. You'll have to figure out those other singularity, what the hell, and so on. If you are willing to do that, please read articles. And remember, I'm not talking about TOI articles, okay? And I'm not talking about Chetan Bhagat's things in the non-fiction domain. I'm talking about genuine, good, intellectual stuff. For that, at your age, unless you have been an extensive reader, an article will confuse you. And so you should be willing to do that. Whereas the book takes care of it. And plus, you can go to the articles later. I think right now is the time to go deep into books and so on. You don't have to go mad, but like little books like this is Aristotle, this is Heidegger. And then you have a very amazing, I really like that book. It's called Philosophy, A Very Short Introduction. Lovely book, challenging, but yeah. So that's the deal, okay? So to answer your question, yes, 100% you can go to articles, but do justice to them. You can't just go through, because I know, see, I've been doing this, right? So I have kids who, in spite of my telling this, because the idea of articles is easier and less scary. So they go to articles, no problem, and they don't listen to me, and they try with a book once or twice because I have said so, but then they say, no, not for me. They go to articles, and towards the end, they're more or less where they stood. They have obviously progress, but not as much, because passages still trouble them. And passages not in the sense of the confusion of the questions. No, the comprehension of the text of the passage is a problem. And if you ask me, comprehension is directly correlated with familiarity. It is lack of familiarity more often than not, which leads to lack of comprehension or miscomprehension, if there is such a word. So that is the reason, lack of familiarity. If you're familiar with the content, even difficult text from that area won't trip you up as much, because you know about that domain. But if you don't know anything about that domain, then even an easy thing from there will take your case. Okay, so that is the thing. But if you're willing to do that work, which will eventually be as much work as reading a book, so so your choice, but yeah, this is what it is.
Okay, awesome. I think that answered a lot of your questions. We've been getting a lot of questions in the chat box. Ekagra has asked that, being a working professional with, familial responsibilities, they're choosing to go down this exam route. It can get hard to decide what to do, reading or practicing or mock tests. So I think the advice that you're looking for here is to look at what your skill set is telling you. If you're a good test taker, and if not, that's not a problem, then you shouldn't worry so much about test taking, and you should worry about preparing for the language, and not just language, but you also have math, you have DILR. So look at what your skill set is right now at present, and ask yourself hard questions about how ready you are, how much time you can dedicate to study, how long you have, and is it financially an intelligent decision or not, and then make a call. And what I would say is, don't rely on other people telling you what you should or should not do, because only you know your skill sets. So after taking a couple of mock tests, ask yourself these hard questions, and then you can come back to us to confirm whether you are thinking on the right lines or not. But right now, I think a little bit of pre-prep testing is required. Ekagra. Massey, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, we at Takshzila anyway don't recommend regular hardcore test taking before June. I know a lot of people, again, because of the pressure of, social media, YouTube, and a lot of, they start taking it much earlier. We don't recommend it at Takshzila. We think June onward. In fact, we recommend July onward, but okay, June onward should be fine. So till then, you have to build your basics. You have to be able to reach that level. However, on and off you can take just to gauge where you stand and whatever, which can be done either through full length testing or even partial testing. You test that topic, you test that area, or you test that section.
Yeah,
That
sectional tests.
But full hardcore test taking should be left for later. So you will have enough time. Not that big a deal. I'll also add one more thing to it. There was this research done, okay, and they wanted to figure out that, how much, not how much time people spend on social media, but effectively, if you, because all said and done, a lot of social media is text based, right? Whether it is Twitter or Facebook or Instagram is largely photos and video based, but there's text and so on, plus lots of other things. So they tried to figure out how much do people end up reading, and it was astonishing. Okay, so someone who doesn't read at all, but who's an average youngster or whatever, spending time on social media, it seems this person ends up reading about, I don't know, about close to 100 pages every day. That is mind-blowing stuff, which means you'll be able to finish a book. This book you will finish in like a day, or a day and a half. But a proper book, you will be able to finish it in like 3 days, 4 days, and so maximum a week. That is really amazing. So, I mean, let's be honest, most of that time is nonsensical, no? Most of that time spent. So you should have entertainment in life. But now, since you've also decided on a larger goal, something which is worthwhile, something which you think is important for you, that goal needs to, in more cases than not, take precedence over other things. Okay, so leisure should be there, but this thing also should be there. So if you just take that reading of that thing from there to here, and you actually read, I don't think it should be so much of a big deal, So when you go into office, let's say a lot of IT people go in buses, I mean, their company buses or whatever, and it is 100% the case almost that they are sitting like this with their phones. 100%. And so now there are two options. The same phone could be there. You can spend 5 minutes on that Twitter or whatever, and then you can just open Eon on your phone, okay, or Nautilus or Scientific American or whatever. Or this is very small thing to carry. Instead of this, it could be, so you're sitting like this in the bus. You'll also look cool, so. Also remember that maximum chunk of people getting through are working people. And you cannot get through without doing these things. So they have been doing these things. So you can.
Yeah. Okay, I've been, parrying with questions in the chat box. Some of them are just very specific, so I chose to just answer them right there.
So you've replied through texting?
Yes, I'm replying. Yeah, you can just check the chat box. But there was a question by Rahul Vani about some authors being more relevant in particular times. Shall we focus on specific authors, to which I think we're both going to say, no, never, you know, focus on specific authors
No, 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 no.
or current
In the
themes.
beginning, you can see when you're starting out, suppose you're not a reader and all, honestly, don't listen to us, just read. Because the biggest hurdle you have to cross is to go to a book repeatedly.
Yeah.
That can only happen if you are loving the book and whatever. So the best thing, the easiest thing you can do is to read the books from the genre that you go to in movies. So here fiction also is applicable to start with. So if you go to horror, or if you go to rom-com, or if you go to I don't know, mysteries or detective novels, or whatever you go to, there are books available in each one of these genres. So that's how you start with. But once you're comfortable with going to a book and sitting with it for around half an hour to 40 minutes at a stretch, without constantly going to your phone as if otherwise the world is going to end, you should, once you're comfortable with that, then you should graduate. Then you should go to non-fiction. There are, by the way, there are amazing non-fiction books also, which are more of page turners than fiction, for that matter. So we can recommend these books if you ask us on Telegram. So yes.
Ekagra asks to repeat the books that you suggested, the second one.
Does he want to know what book it is?
Yeah, there were two books that you suggested. The first
Heidegger, the German philosopher.
Okay, Heidegger. Yeah.
I don't think right now you need to worry about him.
Yeah, I would say so.
Right now, don't bother about him. They just kept here, so I showed it to you.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of introductory books on very short introductions, okay? Like philosophy, psychology, physics, mathematics, Gandhi, capitalism, capitalism, socialism, communism, anarchism,
sexuality, passion, Pentecostalism, apocryphal gospels, memory, and history of life.
Yeah. So go for those general books rather than specific books. So don't go for Aristotle initially. Go for philosophy. Then that should guide you where you want to go. I mean, what did you like there? For example, you may end up liking David Hume from that book. So go to Hume. You may end up liking Aristotle, then go to Aristotle. You may also end up liking the Chariot's Tale mentioned there, which is about, Buddhism and Nagarjuna and all that. So you may want to go to that Nagarjuna's book, and so on. But I should be calling him Nagarjuna. I mean, not Firang, but yeah, whatever. So that's the thing.
Okay, what else did we have?
Rahul, I don't know if Karishma has.
I've answered Rahul's questions, both of them. But I mean, of course, if you have anything to add, please.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
I mean, it's not necessarily the case that what was asked last year, I mean, the areas will be repeated this year. Almost surely not going to be the case. Could be from anywhere. And you anyway shouldn't think on these lines. You should think of becoming a more holistic, a more widely read reader. Okay, you start with what you like, and then you go to different domains, different areas, as far as you can go, as far as time allows you.
Sneha has a question about vocabulary, maintaining word lists or other strategies. From what you've heard us say today, do you think we will recommend word lists, Sneha?
No harm in it. Most people will forget. Okay, you need to decide how good your memory is. Okay, so if you have a really amazing memory, it's one of the shortest ways to go about it. The other people, I will recommend going through a word list just a few days before their exams, so that there is less time to forget. Okay. But otherwise, in my opinion, a better way of doing language is organically, So learning words as you read. So you can, so the idea is you make your own word list. All right. You can go through a word list. It's okay, on and off. But again, most people forget it. So it just depends on how your memory is. Yes, Rahul. Yes. 100%. How else do you understand? So Sneha, yes, you should maintain word list, meaning you should have your own word list. Yeah, that's the best way I can think of. And so when you're making that, you don't have to cram up your own word list as well. You just have to go through it.
Everyone. Yeah.
So that's about.
Asra says it'd be great if you could suggest some basic texts on different subjects. We should just Google search or pick any basic text. I think what we should do is drop the word basic from text. There is no basic text. I think maybe foundational reading material, on which I think somebody already said that Massey has a ton of YouTube videos in which he's talking about good books to pick up and read, and I would highly recommend
Yeah,
it.
not ton of, but yeah, there are I think 3 videos. So anyway, plus Karishma and I think we'll sort of sit together and
Compiles.
make a short list of the elementary sort of the books which start something. By the way, this is the best. This is one of the most amazing ways. The very short introduction. I'll tell you guys. Okay. I'll just at random name a few things on which you have very short introduction. This is a series by Oxford. Okay. So you have an African history. You have an American history. You have anarchism. You have ancient Egypt, ancient Greece. You have the Bible, you have bacteria, for God's sake, you have black holes, you have Buddha, you have Buddhism. Think of the difference. Then you have on capitalism, you have on citizenship, communism, consciousness, Darwin. Everybody should read Darwin. You have the earth, you have economics, you have Egyptian myth, you have the elements, the chemistry, the elements, okay? Then you have ethics, you have existentialism, you have evolution. Everybody should read evolution. You have game theory, you have galaxies, you have Gandhi, you have the history of medicine, you have HIV and AIDS, you have logic, you have Islam, you have Hinduism, you have Christianity, you have Machiavelli, you have Marx, you have the meaning of life. Interesting book, I liked it. You have modernism, you have molecules, sociology, socialism, the United Nations, the Vikings, anybody? You have William Shakespeare, you have psychiatry, psychology, quantum theory, racism, rhetoric, nothing. You have a book. I have nothing. It's scientific.
Nothing is great.
Yeah. So you have a very short introduction to nothing. So somebody asks you, what book are you reading? You say nothing. Like, what the hell? You're not reading anything? No, I'm reading nothing. Anyways, so yeah. So these are I think this really answers your question, Asra.
Yeah. So Joy asks, I have 52% in 12th and 10 CGPA and 10 CGPA in 10th. Is it worth preparing for MBA? I don't think I'll be able to crack most B schools due to my marks. I don't think that it comes down entirely just to your marks. A lot of it depends on your entire profile.
Yeah.
As well.
I think in most B schools, the minimum is 50. Some very few have 60, I think.
Yeah.
But most 50. And so let's be honest, it is very difficult. Especially when there are people who have 90 or 80 or whatever competing against you. So it is very difficult. However, it is not unknown. Like, people do get through, but then they do other things, or they have done other things which are so stellar and so amazing that they just cannot refuse you. Which in fact also serves as a reason why you didn't get good marks, because you were just into something, so for example, if you were into music in the sense of playing something, and you got so deep into it, and you have something to show for it, like you've participated in rock shows or concerts, or you've passed these levels of Cambridge, whatever that music exams and whatever, or whatever, so if you have something to show, or you traveled across India, I don't know, so basically it's about personality. See, the first step is to clear the written test, for which you'll have to study, for which marks are irrelevant. Once you clear the written test, now the next stage comes to personality, which is why it's called the personality round. So personality, an important ingredient is academics, but they know, I mean, we know, right? All of us know that academics are not the only thing. And in some cases, it is not even important. But then do you have something to show for it as an alternative? What can you show me that tells me that personality wise, I can't miss you, So that is what is important. The people get through with all sorts of percentage. Okay. Plus, the top 10 B schools or the top 15 B schools are not the end of the world. These days, a lot of good B schools are coming up, which take students, with lower marks or whatever. And the kids are doing absolutely fine in life, meaning they're really amazing. Like we have this institute in Pune called Balaji. Okay, so there were a lot of kids, with lower marks, either in their academics or in competitive tests, or both. And so, we only had that. I mean, we used to recommend it because it's relative to private B schools, it is fairly lower priced. Okay. And we are still in touch with a few of those kids, and they are really doing well, so yeah, it's not the end of the world. Yes, Rahul, we will do that.
I
So,
think
no more
all the questions. Yeah, no more questions.
Anyway, time's up almost. Yeah. All right, guys, it was good to speak with you, and we will talk far more in classes and so on. Okay. And interesting. Karishma, anything to add?
No, thank you everybody for some really pointed questions. I think we had fun engaging with them, and thank you for listening to both of us very early in the morning. And we look forward to engaging with you more individually and personally in the coming days. And all the best for all of your endeavors.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody, and all the best. Good day.